Hey guys, I hate to break it to you, but let me just tell you, your Porsche is not special. Sorry. All right, everyone, welcome back to the Desert Drives Editor's Rant. That's what this is. Some people call it a podcast. Some people call it a vlog. I don't know. Really, it's just the editor ranting. That's what I do. I'm just going to rant. And today I do have a very specific rant. It's a little bit of a pet peeve, actually. I've been occasionally I go to events, Porsche specific, sometimes car events, but usually Porsche events, and I'm asked to speak. And look, there's a challenge that I've been putting out to everyone. I know, we drive Porsches. Porsches are really cool. Porsches are a car that people aspire to. They dream of. When they're kids, they put pictures up on their wall. Some people are lucky enough to get a Porsche when they're very young and have Porsches all their life. Sometimes some people aren't. Some people wait. And they don't get one until much later. But all of us have this in common, that we love Porsches. That's why we're here. That's why we're in the PCA, specifically the Las Vegas region. But, as great as Porsches are, as much as I love them, I don't know about you, but I've loved them for a very long time. I can remember seeing a Porsche for the first time. It was a 914. I'm of the age where I can remember a 1975 Porsche in Mexico blue. I remember seeing a new one of those. That was a new car. Now, I was a child. I was a very small child. This is one of my earliest memories. I grew up kind of out in the woods. The neighbor's house wasn't even a house. It was a summer cabin. So we didn't really see the neighbors until it was summertime. It was in the Northwest where it rained all year, and then in the summertime it would get nice, and everyone would come down to the lake, and they'd bring their fun cars. Lots of cool cars came out to the lake out in the middle of the woods. And I remember seeing the neighbor's Porsche 914. And yes, it was Mexico blue. I don't know. Maybe it was some other color blue. But in my memory, it's a very old memory, I remember that it was a Mexico blue 914. And the neighbor kid, who was my age, he came over and he wanted to show off his mom's car. He's like, "Look at my mom's car." I'm like, "Wow, what is that?" And he said, "It's a Porsche, and it'll go 100 miles an hour." Now, I don't know if that's true. I didn't believe him back then. I was like, "No way. Nothing will go 100 miles an hour. You're crazy." I mean, let's face it, 914s, it is a struggle to go 100 miles an hour, but they will do it. Some of them, I don't know if the car was a 2-liter, a 1.8, 1.7. I have no idea which version of the 914 it was. I just remember it was a new car back then. It was like a spaceship compared to the cars that my folks drove. We didn't have Porsches when I was a kid. So that was the first Porsche I drove, and I remember that was it. I wanted one, and weren't a lot of Porsches in rural Washington State growing up where I was. So every time I saw one on television, I just couldn't wait to get behind the wheel of a Porsche. I just loved the way they looked. I didn't really have any sense of what it would be like to drive something like that. I knew that one day I would have one, but I didn't know what to expect. I just had this fantasy. And at some point, there was never a neighbor that would give me a ride. There was never, my folks' friends didn't have one. Hardly ever saw them, like I said, in the town that I grew up in. They were super rare. Maybe you saw a 924. Or like I said, the occasional 914. You never saw 911s in the wild where I was from. Occasionally when we'd go to the big city of Seattle, you'd see one parked on the road, and it was just like, wow, oh my gosh, look at that thing. But no opportunity to get behind the wheel. No opportunity to really even sit in one until I finally Ah, man, when I was like 19, um, a buddy and I decided to go out and see if car dealerships would let us test drive Porsches. And I convinced some dealer, maybe I was 18. I don't know. I think I lied and told the salesperson that my grandmother just died and left me a bunch of money. So the salesperson was like, "All right." They were more than happy to hand me the keys to that 1984 Targa 911. And that car was only like 6 or 7 years old at that time. So that was a contemporary 911. Yes, 964s had probably just come out, but still an 84 911, even to this day, is just an amazing car. But how many people would hand the keys to an 18-year-old for any Porsche, much less an air-cooled manual car like that? Got behind the wheel, drove that thing, and holy cow, that did not help me in any way, because at that point, I realized that the fantasy was realized. It's one of those few things that when you think about what it's going to be like and what it's actually like, how often do those things mesh? How often are those things really the same? Especially when you're young. But this, driving that 911, was every bit as awesome as I thought it would be. But unfortunately, my grandmother hadn't died and left me a bunch of money. That sounds awful. My grandmother had died, but she didn't leave me any money. So there were no 911s in my future. But at the time, 914s weren't very expensive, I found out. I started looking around and I came across, by the time I was 19, I found at a little dealer on one of those lots where the prices are, remember that lot? Every town has that car lot where bunch of crappy old used cars with balloons and the price in big orange letters written across the windshield. There was a little 73 black on black 914 1.8 fuel injected car. And I got behind the wheel of that car, and honestly, I didn't really even care how it drove. I just wanted it because it said Porsche on it, and the top came off. I bought that car. It was like $3,000, $29.99. And it did not drive as well as that 84 944. And in fact, it was pretty disappointing at first, having had that experience with the 911. But the more I drove it, the more I had those aha moments. The more I learned that it wasn't just about how fast it was in a straight line, but how it felt on the road and how it was a momentum car and all those wonderful things that we all know and love about 914s if you're a fan of 914s. But that's for another video. I'm not here to talk about how great a 914 is or isn't compared to an 84 Targa or any other Porsche. The point is I had no chance of driving a Porsche unless I went out and figured out a way to get behind the wheel of one. And unfortunately, that meant having to lie to some poor car dealer. Sorry, car salesman guy, you had no chance of selling that car to me. Would love to have bought it. I'd probably still be in debt to this day, which, I mean, I think I'd be okay with. I mean, it would have been a ruinous financial decision, but whatever. I wound up in a 914, loved it, had a great time. So, after all that, I sure wish someone would have given me a ride in a Porsche. Or heck, let me drive their Porsche. So I've got a challenge for you. And it's the challenge I usually give everyone in a room full of people who own Porsches. When I'm speaking to them, I've got a challenge for you. That kid down the street comes by the house. Maybe he mows your lawn and loves your car. Tells you about it all the time. Maybe your grandkid that just, oh my gosh, they can't wait to get, to take a ride or get behind the wheel. Your best friend's kid that just loves the car and tells you all the time. Have you let that kid, if they have a driver's license, why wouldn't you let that kid drive the car? Now, I'm not saying give a teenager the keys to your Porsche and say, have at it. Because I know when I was a teenager, I was irresponsible. I was an idiot. I thought I knew everything. And if I had been given the keys to a Porsche, I would have been irresponsible with it. For sure. Absolutely. And as a consequence, I probably would have wrecked a Porsche if I could have driven one unsupervised. Because I had no idea, especially a 911. We all know 911s. We all know those older 911s. They're a handful, right? They require skill to drive them things. So I am not suggesting anyone do that. What I am suggesting is that when you're at a Cars and Coffee or a regular car show and the little kid wants to look at your car, no, little kid, not even driver's age kid, open the door for the kid, or not even do that. Just tell the kid, hop in, kid. Let him sit behind the wheel. Let him touch the steering wheel. Let him touch the buttons. Now watch over them. Make sure they're not breaking anything, or their hands aren't covered with chocolate or something, or ice cream. But let that kid get exposed to that car. And if you do know a teenager that does have a driver's license, let them drive your damn Porsche. Now get in the passenger seat, give them the keys, and go, man. Or ma'am. Take a kid for a ride in your Porsche. Let them drive if they know how to drive. Teach them to drive a stick if your Porsche has a stick. In a 911. If you can learn to drive a manual 911, you can drive anything for the rest of your life. How awesome would that be to learn to drive in a manual Porsche? My very good friend Mauricio from Three Pedal Posse up in the Northwest is teaching his stepdaughter how to drive in a 964. You can let a kid learn to drive your car. Because like I said at the beginning of this podcast, your car is not special. It's just a car. Even if it says Porsche on it, I don't care that it was one of three in whatever BS color, or you waited 6 months or a year to get it because you had it ordered and they couldn't get them, or there's supply side issues, or blah, 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 blah. Your car isn't special. What's special is experiences. And being with people and kids and friends. And getting the next generation to love these Porsches as much as we do. Kids right now, they grow up, they take Ubers everywhere. Or they sit in the back of an insulated minivan with a TV screen on the headrest, watching SpongeBob. Modern cars are boring, and they do not make young people want them. No kid anywhere is sitting around daydreaming in junior high, looking out the window and watching a Kia drive by and going, oh, I can't wait to get one of those. Most of them aren't even thinking about cars at all because their experience around cars is boring. Automobiles are transportation appliances. Teslas and Prius and all these boring, modern, safe, fantastic, but soulless cars do nothing to make young people want cars. When we were kids, even bad cars were fun to drive. Now, Porsches are so awesome because they're the last car that is still fun to drive. They're the only manufacturer that seems to care about driving. Everyone talks about how fast a Tesla is, but who cares, right? What happens when you get in a Tesla? The first thing the new owner of a Tesla wants to show you is all the doodads on the iPad. That's pretty much all the interior is. iPad, steering wheel, and 4 wheels. Who cares? Whatever Porsche you have is not so important that you can't let the next generation get behind the wheel and go with them and give them the experience of their life. I would have been irresponsible if someone handed me the keys to a Porsche when I was young, if I was given the opportunity to drive the car by myself. I'm not saying do that. Get in the car and go with them, because if my grandfather had a Porsche, or my neighbor had a Porsche, or some friend of mine, or some rando stranger at a car show said, hey, you want to drive this thing? Let's go. I'll go with you. Most people, 99.9999% of kids, are going to be so grateful that someone is going to let them drive their Porsche that they're going to be extraordinarily respectful, and they're not going to drive like a maniac. What an amazing experience it is to take someone for a ride in a Porsche for their very first time in a Porsche. Maybe I need to rephrase that. Not just take them for a ride in a Porsche, but being in the car with someone driving a Porsche for the first time is awesome. That's special. Not your car. Now, I've made this point a million times, like I said, in public events. And after speaking, I always get that guy that comes up and tells me, oh, no, my car, there's no way you could replace it. Yes, you can. There's no Porsche that can't be replaced with something that's just as cool. Maybe you can't get the exact same thing, but there's a million. They have made so many Porsches. There are millions of them, people. Get one in a different color. Who cares? Okay. Your dad passed this one down to you. That's special. You don't want that to be wrecked. I get that. But wouldn't your dad have wanted you to pass that on to some other kid too? Isn't that more what he cared about? Even the heirlooms are not special. It's the experiences. The experiences that we have behind the wheel of a Porsche is what makes them something that we all love. Maybe it's not even a kid. Maybe it's just anyone that's excited about driving a Porsche for the first time. That's fun. So, you got a Porsche? You know a kid that just got their license? Go for a ride with that kid. Let them drive and be a part of something that they will remember forever. You remember the first time you drove a Porsche. You do. Who let you drive their Porsche? Probably wasn't your Porsche. Maybe it was. Maybe you had to buy one for it to be the first time you ever drove one. And that kind of sucks, honestly. It's not that it's not a great thing to drive a Porsche for the first time. It's the one that you went out and bought. But it's way more special to have the opportunity to drive one that isn't yours and to realize how great they really are. So return the favor. Whoever, pay it forward, man. Whoever let you drive their Porsche, pay that forward. You owe it to the next generation of Porsche fans. There are getting to be fewer and fewer of them. And not so far in the future, there will be no Porsche drivers.